Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about interns. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, is it good to intern as a developer if I am the only developer they have in the team and they want me to develop a product for them, but I am not a rockstar developer? I would be very surprised if an intern is a rockstar developer. So I can't, to me that's kind of inferred, but maybe there are interns that are rockstar developers. I still don't really fully understand what people mean when they say rockstar developer. Mm. Anywho, well, I would say that no, it's probably not a great idea to be an intern and then have you be the only person working on something. The thing is, though, it's hard to be a chooser, like a bakers can't be choosers. When you intern for various positions, it's very difficult for you to find like that ideal setup. I can give you what I try to do for the interns that I work with, and I'll give you sort of the setup that I suggest that you try to look for. All things else excluded, I mean, anything is better than nothing. I'm just going to give you what I suggest and what I try to do. So usually, and it wasn't actually, I had two interns for a few months now. It was a while. It was a few weeks back, but basically they interned with me. So if you apply to wherever I'm working at the time, and if they actually do interns and you get assigned to me, you would have the same sort of setup if I had my say. So the story goes that my one of my coworkers, who is one of the engineering managers at the company, because in this specific company I work as a principal engineer, which basically means that I don't like my manager is like the head of the entire department, and I don't have an engineering manager per se. I work with them and take on tasks that are more holistic, if that makes sense. Like I work with tons and tons and tons of various projects across the entire organization instead of just in one specific product. And so he comes to me and he says that they're going to pull into bachelor degree students, or was it master thesis students? I can't remember exactly, but basically interns from our perspective. And so he asks me, okay, so how do we set, like, can you like take care of them, and like what projects should we put them on? And so I tell him that the ideal situation is if you put them on a project that is located that has value to the business itself. In other words, you as the engineering manager, you see a value in the thing that they are going to build, so that are some stakes. But here's the key thing which I argue for, and that is to make it something that is in the outskirts of projects. Because one of the biggest mistakes that you can make when you deal with interns or very, very, very junior, like we're talking like practically haven't ever coded before types of developers, is to put them on a task that has some type of importance in terms of delivery. Because you have no idea how long it's going to take them to do anything, if they will even be able to produce something. They're completely untested. And it's, as I've said before, guys, practically impossible to figure out just how fast an individual is going to be. So what I usually say is start them off with something very, very low risk, and see how quickly do they adopt this thing, how quickly do they make progress. And then if it turns out that you have a really solid person or someone who can handle more, you put them closer to the sweet spot of the business logic and so forth. You scale things up rather than just throw them in on the deep end immediately. And so what I told them was that, all right, so do we have any projects where basically if they worked on this for a really, really long time, it does not matter if it never gets finished, practically. If it does get finished, it does actually have some value, so we have some idea of what we want them to ship, and that actually will be useful to us. And is it possible for them to work fairly autonomously with the thing? Those are the three things I usually put up as like suggestions to people when they intern for positions. The reason being very simply because, as I said, odds are that as an intern, you're not going to be able to ship code as regular sprint work or anything like that. And the stress that I see put on some people when they're in a delivery sort of mode, where you basically take an intern and you treat them as a junior software developer, a mid-level, or a senior, is that you're going to stress the fuck out of them, because they're going to spend more time looking things up and just understanding the basics of programming than they're going to ship value for you. And as you can imagine, that is pretty stressful for a junior that ideally has some work experience or something like a little bit more to contribute with. It's going to be, you know, the exact same experience, if not worse, for an intern. And so in order for you to, as a business, understand that, like, if you put them in this situation, this was my first job, literally, guys. My first job as a college kid, or like you're right out of school, was literally build this entire system yourself. And I got one guy to ask for help who wasn't really involved in the project and had his own work, so I practically were alone on it. It was horrible. It was so horrible, like it was one of the worst jobs I've ever had. And I also had the expectations of people on me to deliver. And people were getting frustrated with me because I couldn't deliver, because I wasn't good enough. I was way out of my depth, basically. And so that's why I recommended to my coworker that put them on something that where nobody's gonna get angry with them if it takes too long. That's really important. And put it somewhere in the outskirts. All right, so we agree that, okay, yeah, well, we're in this specific company, we're going to try to collect some DORA metrics for the various systems that we have within the organization. And so we had a system in this case for how to track this information, and I said, okay, so let's put them on setting up the because there was a UI interface and a web application that was collecting all this information from various parts of the company. And I said, all right, let's put them up to creating a website, like a visualization of the metrics. In other words, so it shows a nice little graph or something like that. And then they get some backend jobs, basically, because like a little bit of work there, because now they're going to have to submit that data from the various like pipelines and things like that across the entire organization. And then finally, let's make them learn a little bit about DevOps by creating a simple script or something like that that pulls some data from, in this case it was Azure's APIs to sort of pull down the metrics they will need in order to track like release frequencies and these things that you know about when it comes to DORA, right? And that will be their project. That's going to be the thing, right? And so he said that sounded really, really great, and so we started doing that, and then of course all the things that you can expect happens. And this is the second part that I argue is very important. You have to have ideally someone there to mentor you, because although we had made sure that it really didn't matter if they were like if they shipped something on the first day or if it took the whole period they were going to be with us. In this case, they really did take that long, which I was fully aware of that was a possibility. So we went through it with them, and I said to my manager, do not assume that you're going to get anything from this. You have no idea. It's only after a little while you're going to be able to tell if they are up to the task or not. But and I said, that is why you insure yourself by putting them on something where they can prove how fast they are. That is low risk for them and for us, and it gives them a chance to sort of showcase what they know, right, without a lot of pressure on them. Because they're going to put their own pressure on themselves, which they of course did, because they started calling me, which in this case I was ready for, because I was allocated to them to make sure that I gave them the support, I gave them, help and debugging tips and like all of this sort of stuff. And I mean, for the most part, they could like they were pretty decent in terms of figuring out their own stuff and so forth. But I was there to help them along the way, and I tried to encourage them, of course, and tell them, you don't have to worry, and nobody's putting any pressure on you and things like that. If you need my help or anything like that, we'll just do a call and we will go through the code together. I'll give you some suggestions, and then we did the last thing that I think is very nice. This is not something you can control, but it's really great if the employers understand this. And that was that what I told them was that, so what we're going to do is to try to simulate as much as possible the experience of working in a real software team. In other words, we're going to have code reviews, and we're going to do testing. We're going to do a little bit of working with like in this case it's Azure DevOps boards, but it could have been Jira, whatever, like tasks and things like that. So they get to sort of get a feel for what it means to be in a real software team. Had they been in one of the software teams, they would have gotten that as well. So we could have put them in like a specific software team, but the same rules would still have applied. Ideally, we want them to work on something where they can take as long as they want. And if they do ship something, it's great, but if they don't, it's no big deal. So what I want you to take away from this is that it is usually not a great idea if you're the only person on a product or something like that. The best intern situation that I know of, at the very least, is what I described, where you get to work on some project that is serious, but it shouldn't be something that is business critical or anything like that where there are stakes related to delivery or anything like that as an intern, because usually that is going to be because frankly speaking, guys, most of software development, although we try to support each other and so forth, to a large degree you are on your own. People, like, it's not the norm that you have what I was describing, literally someone who is allocated to you. That is the best possible situation where you have a more experienced software developer who is supposed to mentor you, and then also that person has to want to and be good at it and do all of these other things. It's like getting the right teacher in school. Like, if you're lucky, you will get that person. If you're unlucky, you're sort of on your own. It's the same deal in this job, really. And so when you work with organizations who don't really understand that, that's why I said that this is good for, in my opinion, both from the perspective of the intern and from the perspective of the company, because a lot of companies have these non-critical things, such as things like collecting metrics is a good one. Like, you want to get some information about your workflows or stats or something like that. It is something that is on the side of the main deliverables that is business critical. It will provide value to your organization, and it gives the intern something to a bit of a controlled sandbox to play around in. If they figure it out like enough and prove that they can handle more critical work or higher levels of trust within the delivering and things like that and meeting expectations, then you can move them to the more critical stuff, but start them out on something like that, because that way they get some value from it. They get to work on a real project. They get to get coached and mentored as based on, of course, what the company can provide and so forth. And everybody will usually part as friends afterwards, because the expectation is, well, if you can ship this, it's great, but the focus is that they learn something, and if they manage to get something out the door, well, then you get something back as an organization. But on average, you shouldn't think about an intern as just another software developer. It is someone who is learning the basics of the basics, and they should be treated in that manner. So if you are looking for a place to work or like to be an intern, these are the sorts of things you should be looking for. And if you're not getting that and you get put on a project like that, if you're lucky, it's going to turn out really, really well for you. But in many cases, it's a little bit tough, at least I thought so, to be a solo intern on a project where they basically expect you to deliver like any software developer. Have a great day.